In the immortalized words of Damon Baird, humans are hardwired to react to things that scuttle, and my god do I hate scuttling. As we have lived in many areas as a species and continue to, there has been a constant, unwanted companion that even as we actively try to get rid of it, it just exists with us. An argument could be made that even after humanity has dominated the planet, we still must contend with one form of animal that no matter what other animals we drive away that appear much worse, this one is just a nuisance that just stays there and in some ways can actually still be deadly. Insects have been around for a very long time, much longer than humans, much longer than primates, and much longer than mammals. Their existence on this planet has persisted through cataclysms, tectonic shifts, the dinosaurs, rising and falling of sea levels, and regardless of what has taken out larger animals, insects have persisted, ranging in sizes and going all the way back to the Ordovician period over 480 million years ago when oxygen levels were around 14 to 24%, to literally just a few minutes ago when I saw an ant on the banister of my deck. The fact is that these exoskeleton creatures are alive and well and have been since the drop. Humanity could only hope to even get to a fraction of how long these things have just existed on this rock. So given that much time to adapt and evolve, insects have taken on many different forms and foreseeably in the future will continue to do so. Many different survival techniques have come out of the sheer time frame they have survived, from forming colonies that move as one, to building expansive underground tunnels, to rolling up piles of poop into a ball to impress other female dung beetles, which arguably may be a little strange, but it does get the job done. These adaptations sprung up at some time in the past as potentially just a strange thing that one insect did in particular that then became the basis of operation for their species because they were the most fit to their environment. In South Africa, the continent, not the country, a group is out there prospecting for diamonds. As they blast away and look for seismic reverberations, I assume that's what they're doing to determine the presence of, diamonds, they end up disturbing a species that is quite literally known to pick an animal clean in just a few moments. And then from there, it will use the bones in a rather interesting way. So in today's episode, let's discuss the bone-snatching insects from the bone snatcher and discuss how it breaks down and dissolves its prey that rapidly, and how it is able to form these conglomerations later, along with a discussion on could this really happen in real life? Prepare to be disturbed. So we kick off our story with the Nambia Desert. Remember, desert has two S's because you always want more, and desert has one. As they are blasting, they are looking for diamonds in the immediate area. As they do find what appears to be a volcanic pipe, the surveyor says he found something that looks like a volcanic pipe, except it's not actually a volcanic pipe. How many times can I say volcanic pipe? A lot. Apparently there are no volcanoes in South Africa, which is why they're a little confused as to why this would be out here just randomly. As they do go to investigate, they pass by warnings placed all over the area by people who knew what was out there. Don't worry about those. I'm sure it's totally not important. They pull up to a mound, one big pile of crap style, as they're not too sure what it actually is. One suggests that maybe it's just a lump of sandstone or a pressure dome. Yeah, just probably go poke it with a stick then. I'll stand back here. As he breaks in to take a sample, something under is moving. Breaching the surface, he does a smart thing and says, "Hey, let's go in." Okay, bro, good plan. Again, our species is founded on the idea that poking things with a stick is our God-given right, not throwing our bodies into the fray and hoping for the best. Even a random dude in Slither knew to stick a stick into the pulsating blob and not his own hands. So as he looks down, he spots a creature that immediately drags him to his fate and is probably rotting like a papaya as we speak. Meanwhile, over in British Columbia, arguably the exact opposite of the Nambian Desert, it starts getting way too cold. Okay, so for some reason, the 154 industrial AC units on top of the building start working triple overtime, tanking the temperature of the room that these scientists are in. And we now meet Zach. As he types on a keyboard, apparently, all they had to do the entire time was just push the enter key to shut down the AC systems. Yes, very good. First off, what kind of building are you in that can freeze your employees? Like, I get it. It's like, I develop weather systems and everything's good, but why couldn't they just leave the room? Are you telling me that they could have actually frozen solid in there in a few minutes? Like, dog, what? I don't know. It just seems odd. Like, that's what I'm assuming the countdown to the freeze was. Anyhow, at this point, randomly, the company Zach was working for was contacted by this completely foreign and disconnected diamond mining company due to his system analysis skills. Zach has been flown to the Nambian Desert to complete his work out there because the two are related. There was nobody closer. I mean, I felt that. I mean, I've been to job sites when I worked construction, and I remember being in West Georgia working the entire day just to be sent out 2 hours later to South Carolina at the state line to work the entire night. Illegal? Yes. Did it almost kill me behind the wheel of the car the next day when I had to go to class? Also yes. But was someone closer? Absolutely yes, and that's why I stopped working for them shortly after. Huge bra moment. Tangents aside, apparently those make people who are new to the channel upset. Zach meets an old man next to the road who's just sort of hanging out. Zach gets handed a Tylenol because it says his head hurts, and after that product placement, a truck comes up and then picks him up. Meeting Carl, his driver, he says, "Well, you look like crap." And Zach's like, "Oh, nice to meet you too," as he boards the truck and then heads across the desert. Coming up to the gate of the camp, all I can say is the pay had better be good. Heading into the security section of the camp, what's this? A dateable young woman in my Blood Diamond camp? No way. Guess I'm headed to Nambia pretty soon. So she goes through his stuff. Apparently Zach thought it was going to be Spring Break 1998 as he brought a fleet of condoms. Stay safe out there, I suppose. Mickey continues going through his stuff as they find his subterranean analyzer. He starts talking about how it can find water 100 feet deep with it as Johan starts running his Phalos holster about, "Oi mate, I can do that with a twig." That's probably not even British, or no, not even Australian. I don't know what the hell that was. So anyways, Johan, no you can't. Shut up. So as tensions start to rise over literally nothing, Johan has violent levels of copium as he puts like a book down his pants asking Mickey to grab it. See, we have to understand, Johan is basically a cat, and he has to hiss at the new cat and pee over everything to assert dominance. But the real alpha Chad steps up to the plate, known as Carl the driver. His name's just Carl. He headbutts Johan and then knocks him down. See, it's okay to like women and have strong feelings towards them. It's not okay to be a complete douche canoe and an absolute clown like Johan. As Mickey then walks out, she briefs him about how some of the prospectors went missing and they now have to go find them. I gotta tell you, I'd rather crap in my hands and clap than go through a desert for 16 hours with no AC in the back of a truck that is basically driving over open countryside. Now, if you gave me a 1996 third-gen 4Runner, which happens to be the best variant of 4Runner ever created, with a 3.4-liter engine of unbridled I will not die ability, but it doesn't go very fast, might be a different story. That's pretty much the only thing I'd cross that much open land in, and has nothing to do with anything, so we're gonna move on. So Mickey is straight up strapped along with the rest of the crew. Zach asks about it, and apparently they were attacked by rebels, and the last driver didn't make it. How they didn't see that coming in a wide open area such as this desert is beyond me. Unless they didn't have force multipliers with them in the first place, which, why? Like, even traveling across the US, I keep that thing on me. God damn it, Bobby. The reality is humans are violent. We always have been. Very likely we always will be, and that disposition, it's not going anywhere because it's in our nature, but only because we had to smack down every other animal that was stronger, had bigger teeth and claws that could hunt us. You don't go through that much on this planet without picking up a few adaptations along the way. Humanity, though, is undefeated champions on this rock. Stay strapped or get clapped. Prior to leaving, the old man on camp then shows up and does something to Titus, I imagine bless him, for his coming journey. He hands him one of those skull things on the warning post as Titus then climbs in and they go to head out. So the squad leaves on this fun-filled adventure, which definitely won't result in like a 6'5" tall bone-snatching creature hunting them. You'd have to be crazy to think that's the case. As my sarcasm increased over the last few weeks, it's a coping mechanism. So as they keep driving, Zach then asks, how far away is this? Unfortunately, the movie is using heathen units. I know, I'm just as disgusted as you are. So he says that it's about 1,000 kilometers away, and count your blessings, because at least Johan isn't here just being violently horny. So for all those interested in the Lord's units, as we know them, that's about 620 miles, and if we really want to get technical here, that's about 1,092,960 bald eagles in height to their destination. Yes, I did the math, it was important. So as they roll through, well, there's not too much to look at, but luckily for them, they don't have to drive the full 1,092,960 bald eagles, as they find the truck is closer by. Approaching it, they find everyone has been picked clean and desiccated. But this only happened just a few hours ago. How could they have ended up in this condition that quickly? Now, as you may have imagined, this isn't the standard procedure. Typically, when you drop in the desert, there may be a few animals that end up picking at you at night, but rapidly your body will lose water and you will essentially deflate. A case could be made that depending on the heat and relative humidity, that your bacteria like in your body wouldn't have enough time to actually eat you and bloat you under normal circumstances. And that's not across the board. Obviously, in higher temperatures and lower humidities, you can still bloat. But because of this, your skin will essentially turn to leather pretty rapidly. However, what won't happen is you won't be reduced to a pile of meaty bones that quickly. If you run across something that can do that, at least go out in a funny pose that will confuse archaeologists in the future. So Carl assumes it's a murder and that Harvey is responsible because he's the only body not accounted for. Carl, it's an insect monster killing people. On the other ridge, Titus then calls out and finds footprints in the sand leaving the area. They then follow them and it switches from bipedal to quadrupedal prints. It's a little strange, but not unheard of for an animal to do this. Zach then holds up his reader as they find warning posts all around. Titus is concerned and everyone else wonders like why there's a bunch of dead trees here. So Zach goes to investigate one of the posts as Titus stops him from touching it. He tells him it's not a religion thing, it's just a warning. Titus then holds up what he was given and it's the same thing. I imagine it's like a territory marker meaning, hey, don't go in there. So at this point, they lock and load Brides of Christ to get back to the truck. And as they follow the tracks, they find what's left of Harvey. Same issue, completely desiccated and taken back to factory pre-assembly. Then check his bones and find, yep, this is Harvey. There's a plate on his femur. And they realize, in fact, Harvey broke his leg, so this has to be him, right? Nobody in the history of the world could have ever broken their leg. Of course, nobody would be in the Nambian desert, so I guess it really doesn't matter. Unless it's you watching this right now. Do you hang out in the Nambian desert? What are you doing there? So realizing something else is out there, they are called back to camp to refuel the truck, which is weird, right? Because weren't they just gonna go casually drive 1,092,690 bald eagles? Like, let's assume they were driving at 62.5 kilometers per hour or around 38.8 miles per hour. It looks like they've only driven for probably 6 hours? Meaning they've really only got about 232.8 miles or 374.6, assuming they didn't stop for anything. They still have plenty of fuel to get done what they need. That distance measured in bald eagle. Later that night, as they sleep out in the open in their super comfortable truck, Zach lays there with lights blasting him in the eyes as he's thinking about Mickey. Flying across the planet, staying a few days in the desert with no female contact previously, will do that to you. So Zach gets an idea. Being a huge nerd, he takes the backboard brace and then starts surfing down the dunes. Mickey comes out as Zach realizes, oh, I'm keeping everyone up. My bad. So she brings with her the subterranean analyzer as Mickey starts making moves on him, bro, the signals are saying this is all good. Proceed with the mission. So he adopts the little spoon position, which don't lie, you do it too from time to time. It's nice to be loved. She says, oh, it's just to conserve body heat. I've had that used on me before, whatever you say, pretty lady. If you haven't picked up on it yet, Mickey is my ideal woman. So, as I swear we are getting to some science soon, they really took a while to show the creature, and unfortunately, you guys have joined me during a stage in my life where I have a mighty need to talk. Anyhow, as they sit there looking out across the desert, they discuss Mickey's brief thing in the past with one of the guys. I wasn't really listening, I think it was Carl, but it's pretty bad. I'm the guy explaining the movie to you. I should probably have listened to that. But anyways, Zach says he's busy as he designs extreme survival systems, so I simply don't have time to spend with a woman. Good God, what a giga chad. So anyways, Mickey then walks back to the truck as he struck out with that one, as Zach's analyzer starts spazzing out. And as he looks around, the creature walks up on him. Bro, what is that? He then runs to the truck and tells everyone something is out there. Mickey looks out and realizes the bones from earlier are gone, so at a minimum, something had to collect those. Harvey is now missing. They accuse Zach of taking the bones, which is it's a safe conclusion, but Mickey was out there spooning with them for a little while, and they were just it's not likely that he was capable of pulling that maneuver off so quickly unless he just grabbed him and threw him. He's like, hey, this will be fun. So they ask Zach what's going on, and how is he supposed to know? So much for science, am I right? Their words, not mine. Titus now knows what's up though. Tokolash, as he keeps saying. They discuss it and call it the Sand Mother. She drinks the life from your bones of anything living, and despite that sounding like a great time, no thank you. They now find footprints again as the driver says we'll leave in 20 minutes because it's nighttime. Bro, what? Does this thing not have lights on it? The next morning, we clearly see this thing has lights on it, and the driver's just a bit of a stubborn mule type of personality person. Following the footsteps 20 minutes later, they come up over a ridge as Kurt spots it through the scope. Looking at it, well, it definitely does look like Bigfoot to a degree. Carl's able to get a shot off on it as it turns around and they find it's just a pile of bones. Looking much less mobile than previously, actually. Nobody's really sure at this point what is going on, but they take the bones and find previous surgery from those bones. This is Harvey. So Carl seems to have an issue with Titus naming this thing. Zach asks Titus what it actually is, and he calls it Istikhulu, I believe is how it's pronounced. Flesh that disappears and bones that walks. This indicates, however, this thing functions and is a known to the locals, but this would mean that it's been in this area for quite some time, enough time to inspire legends. So as they go to leave the truck, a random explosion happens. See, that's why you should have stuck with Toyota, you fools. Mickey calls out on the radio as nobody answers, and a plane is dispatched to look for them, as then it waves and lets them know that it sees them. They then set up camp for 2 days, as that's how long it'll take for the truck to come rescue them, but they'll be out of there after that. So as night falls, they place the bones in the seat area and then hunker down. Later that evening, Titus is then woken up to do his fire watch, and as he looks out, Kurt says that he has seen nothing. Kurt then heads away from the truck for some reason to go to sleep as the analyzer starts freaking out. Titus begins hearing something and goes to wake Kurt up, but as he does, he realizes, well, his flesh is disappearing. Bummer, bro. Don't think you're gonna recover from that one. So Titus, for some reason, keeps his arm on Kurt while he wicked witches into nothing. Of course, you typically do not want to hold on to the guy that is currently melting, as that could spread, especially if you don't know what's causing it. Oh, and look at that, it's spreading. All the meat begins to be eaten off Titus's arm as well. Carl then takes a pot shot at it, and that is not going to do anything. I mean, he's made of ants at this point. The best thing that you could have done is probably take out Kurt, who's currently feeling like every nerve in his body is on fire. So it becomes rapidly apparent that they aren't even sure how to take this thing out, because they're basically ants, which is interesting. So let's discuss the flesh melting, at least for a moment. And don't click off and be a giant nerd because I start talking about science. So as you may or may not know, ants have several different tools at their disposal, depending on the species, that allows them to kind of break down the barriers of a prey species. Now typically this is going to involve something like another insect with a tough exoskeleton. In order to take down prey that is much stronger or larger than them, one of the tools that they have are their sheer numbers and the ability to work together. Being a eusocial species, their ability to cooperate and coordinate with one another even outclasses humanity's ability to work together. So for your information on what a eusocial species actually even is, we live in a perennial colony with overlapping generations, cooperative care of the brood, and crucially, reproductive division of labor, such that most colony members belong to like a non-reproductive worker caste. Along with this ability, ants typically have many attacks at their beck and call depending on the type of environment that they're living in. Now, I'm not an entomologist, but I do know a thing or two about biology in general, and some forms of ants possess they possess stingers that can inject venom into their prey. Now, for insects that are the same size as them or even slightly bigger, this is a death sentence. This will cause cells the venom comes into contact with to rupture and undergo apoptosis, with several stings coming from several ants. This can quickly overwhelm larger animals as well. Humans frequently come into contact with ants, and you may be thinking, oh, I'm being bitten. Well, yeah, you're being bitten, but mostly you're being stung. And this can actually lead to an allergic reaction in the body, causing anaphylaxis if you aren't lucky. And let's say you do go in anaphylaxis, if you are alone and drop on this ant pile or anywhere near it, it is highly likely that if nobody finds you in the ensuing months, you will be picked absolutely clean by the colony. And they always go for the eyes first. So this venom is usually going to be housing another chemical dependent upon the species. Some ants, like fire ants for instance, have been known to contain alkaloids, and this can have the same effect as an acid if you aren't aware. This inspires necrotic and hemolytic events inside the body, destroying tissue as it comes into contact with the venom and opens blood vessels, creating further issues, like opens them, like slices them open. Now an alkaloid can be a base or an acid, surprisingly enough, just something to take away, but specifically with fire ants, this is a stronger base that can interestingly have antibiotic properties, which, sweet, new antibiotic just dropped, which will ruin in like 10 years. Classic humanity. These doctors need to stop freaking prescribing antibiotics for the flu. So now the other forms, known for actually its body melting capabilities, is something everyone is familiar with, and that's just an acid. Just know that bases, when strong enough, can absolutely melt your meat suit, as well as just cause cell death on a massive scale. But formic acid is a component that many ants will contain within their venom that they inject. This is a double-pronged issue for the body dealing with this. First, the venom itself is wreaking havoc on cellular communication and functionality due to it disrupting cell function. Along with this, acids will actually denature enzymes and proteins alike, resulting in, you guessed it, cellular death, disruptive signals to one another, and creating a toxic environment for immune cells to enter and try to destroy the threat. Because even once the acid is neutralized, you still actually have like a damaged area of the body, which then bacteria can get to you, and that's not good either. So while this is happening, the nerve cells would be under attack, as they would then have to yell to the next nerve cell, hey, report to the giant nerd upstairs that I'm in constant pain and I'm about to die, which this process will continue for several hours. As the formic acid continues to settle into the system and into this area, this will have cascading consequences. Formic acid is an inhibitor of the mitochondrial cytochrome oxidase, causing histotoxic hypoxia and acidosis. The acidosis causes dilation of cerebral vessels, facilitation of the entry of calcium ions into cells, loss of lysosomal latency, and deranged production of ATP. Basically, it disrupts everything that your cell is. So as you can tell, it's not really good. If you get stung enough and you receive enough formic acid, you will drop. I mean, you're bigger than an ant, so it's like, it would take a lot, but it can happen. But in the case of this body melting ability, these ants would almost be filled to the absolute brim with formic acid, amongst likely some other things. Upon attacking Kurt specifically and Titus as a secondary attack, as they bite and inject this acid like right next to each other, it would quickly eat through the layers of skin, heading to the sensory nerves, which would be incredibly painful for like a minute or two, and then it would eat through the muscle. Eventually though, it would be much like a third-degree burn, where you wouldn't feel anything. Of course, the issue is, however, the ants don't stop at the surface. New nerves are then found and injected with this acid, and this would feed the colony as your cells are turned into a slurry and you are rapidly consumed by the colony. The adaptation process is that everything is used. For one reason or another, the ants have adapted this particular method of breaking down stronger than average exoskeletal structures, or they had to, which led them to carry more formic acid. From here, it was as simple as carrying that over to animals who have endoskeletal structures. This increased formic acid production, which is a weak acid by the way, only possessing a pH of 3.25, similar to that of like an orange or a soda, would begin to dissolve the body. Of course, I would also believe that there are other digestive enzymes forced into the sting as well, which is why it works so rapidly, because you're probably not going to get dissolved by an orange, like, instantly. Otherwise, that would be really, really bad. But did you know a pineapple actually feels tingly in your mouth? Not because you're allergic, but if you are, you need to get that checked. It's because it's digesting you as you are eating it. Very fun. So Carl at this point then throws gasoline as the driver pulls a force multiplier on him because it's like, you're going to blow us all up. But the gas drove them back, probably because it smells horrible and they lost human scent. Raising the light, they have retreated and Kurt is nothing but a skeleton. They then knock out Titus because that's gotta hurt due to the arm meltage, and as the analyzer starts going off again, everybody's a little alarmed. Zach goes out to place gas on the ground, as then Carl takes a pot shot at the creature, and then we finally get a good look at it. And my God, look at this thing. Let's discuss. So you're a smart fella, either that or a fart smella, and this is clearly an ant colony. It's broken down several victims, but the disturbing part about it is, it's not actually as unthinkable that an insect could do this, more so ants than you might imagine, as they probably could pull something like this off. And before all the entomologists start sending me hate mail in the comments, just give me a second and I'll explain it. So you have to understand that as a eusocial species, ants are dictated by the queen to behave and respond in certain ways. They are work drones. They do not think for themselves so much as like they're just pushed along their entire lives to serve the colony, and you have to look no further than their abilities to overcome obstacles in every single day life. Coming across a small stream for most insects is an insurmountable impasse, I guess you could say, should they not be able to fly. They are swept way off course, probably eaten by a fish, or they're taken away from wherever they were trying to get, which if that was food, they run out of energy and they expire. Ants have a solution that shows a level of working together that is absolutely insane. Nobody is commanding nothing, at least in this context, because the queen is back at the colony. This is like, nobody's planning anything out. There's no contractor meeting. There's no one person like, I know what we can do. We're gonna do X. Ants will just start forming a bridge with their own bodies. And this may not seem like much, as it's just like how if you took two phone books and interlaced them page by page, you could tow a car with the friction alone between the pages. With millions of legs interlocking and holding onto one another, no one ant is exposed to too great of a force, allowing them to hold while other ants walk across. In fact, what is it? Just even to that note, ants are incredibly strong. Like they can hold 6 times their weight, I believe it is, or I want to say it's 6 times. So you have to imagine if you took like a human-sized colony, it's gonna be 6 times stronger than humans, which kind of makes sense why they can hold their bones. But to further this point, this also is how ants will move prey towards the colony once subdued. They can form chains that are then coordinated and pull much larger food sources back near the ant mound. So to this end, I ask, what is the difference between an ant chain pulling or a muscle fiber pulling? Functionally, there is none. If you extrapolate that out to like several chains of ants all pulling in the same direction at the same size as a bridge with the same goal, you would now have something that would resemble actual muscle on any other animal. By using skeletal biomechanics, an already intrinsically known function of ants, you can begin to see how this species is able to pilot bone mechs. By doing this, while it uses energy, the ground covered would be much more than they could do walking across alone. And this gives them an evolutionary advantage over other species of ants or even anything running around, which is why it would form in the first place. The form it takes on really has nothing to do with like what it wants. It's really just about the animal that it takes out. It looks human because it's using human skeletons and the bones must fit and operate in a way that would have operated normally in a person's life. Let's say a coyote was attacked. I'm not even sure if there are coyotes in South Africa, but if any other animal was attacked, then the ants would look like a coyote. They operate as the muscle, and by using the skeleton as a basis for the movement, and even in the same ranges of movement, they're able to cover an area much faster than they would normally. And this is a literal slap skeleton, the ant colony used to ride these babies for miles moment. But this coordination would require much more than the average intelligence of a queen ant. Something would have to change for them to be able to coordinate to this level and higher thinking, and this involves tool usage, which we will get there in a moment. So somehow this causes a fight between Carl and Zach. Like, Carl, settle down, bro. I actually like you. Just take a breath. You are freaking out, man. Zach says that there's a system at work and I need to figure it out so I can stop it. And then Titus now starts convulsing, saying Sandmother, as they discuss what this thing even is. So they decide their best chance is those that want to go ahead and hike out there. Magda, the driver, is going to stay there with Titus, and with that thing like super close by, all right. Like, all I'm saying is, I know the dashboard is fried on that old truck. Like, go under the dash, rip out the wires associated with the ignition, and connect the ignition wire to the battery wire, and then tap the starter wire to the battery wire. This is a life or death scenario. Start connecting things until you get the truck to start. You'd see me tearing apart that thing in a heartbeat. Also, don't steal a car with that information. Don't be a nerd. It's harder to take cars than you think. I'm just saying, if you're gonna be eaten by an ant colony, that would be the move. So, heading into the desert, it's my nightmare, walking in hot sand. No thanks. Zach gets a reading, and the analyzer determines the acidity as well. He then places it on the ground and finds the ants have formic acid as discussed earlier, which is pretty standard for ants. But before they can conclude what they were talking about, a sandstorm begins blowing in, making things 16 times the more fun. Having hidden in the sand, they emerge relatively unscathed as they realize the fuel is almost empty and the analyzer is also broke. Not really sure why the fuel thing is like concerning. They should have known that to begin with, right? They were holding it. But continuing on, as they decide to stop for the night, Zach covers the surrounding area in what was left of the gas to cover up their scent to keep away the ants. He holds hands with Mickey for the night, as does Carl. Let's all hold hands before we get eaten. Zach starts listening as Mickey says grains of sand rolling against each other create this moaning noise in the desert at night. But there was no wind. So what was creating the moaning noise? Well, you should have looked up because Big Papa has returned. Looking out, they spot the creature has already followed them out there, and as it crawls along, good lord, it's got Magda's face. Again, this shows how quickly these ants can cover ground once actually taking over a human. But you have to ask yourself, why keep the face? I believe there has to be some sort of localized intelligence, like a conduit ant, that will kind of pilot everything. Like an officer in the field, due to the sandstorm, the face would have been kept intact to deal with the environment, seeing as we have not seen this happen before. This would block damage and potentially stop from having the officer ant, as it is, put at risk. This ant exists for the sole purpose of directing colonies that are currently inhabiting the skeleton by relaying scent-based orders from the queen ant. And these are going to be like any of like the soldier ants who protect the worker ants as they forage, just another usable class of ant. So it sends out a group of ants touching the gasoline as then it crawls at them, faking us out because it just kind of disappears afterwards. And this is likely due to the fact that it can't get their scent due to the smell of gas, so it doesn't even know that they're there. The next morning, the group is still alive as they hear the radio. It's the prospectors truck. They find a collapsed section of the dome from earlier and they know these ants are everywhere, so they crawl into the hidey hole because there's no way ants could be in there, right? While tempting fate, they find a nursery in there, and as we all know, the Sandmother are ants, and the only good bug is a dead bug. Zach says that they use the bones as a sort of structure and then pilot them like a bone mech, which arguably is pretty metal. You know, because calcium's a metal. Also, luckily Johann is here, thank God. Zach says they've had hundreds of millions of years to adapt like this, and then they are called back to the surface by Johann. Getting out, Johann pulls a force multiplier on all of them, assuming they've done all this. Johann just hates everyone, he doesn't care. They're then handcuffed in the back of the truck as Carl breaks through the back window as they drive away, and then knocks him out. Then they handcuff him to the back and plan to go after the queen. Zach says that it's looking for a camp somewhere where it can set up a new colony. To be honest with you, I'm not sure how he came to that conclusion. Potentially because I guess the nursery was abandoned, which once a colony does that, they only do that after securing their young, so finding no young, that's the thing that makes sense. They realize though that there is a mine nearby that very likely that's where it's gonna go set up shop. And as they get to the mine, what luck, the cameraman happens to pan by it. They leave Johann in the back hilariously as they bring in some nitroglycerin to blow the place. And if you're wondering why they only are bringing like a little bit of this stuff, if you threw that vial at the creature, the entire ant colony would be vaporized and completely shreked by this amount. Also, a Flammenwerfer would work extremely well to this point too, or maybe some raid. But nitroglycerin, the stuff is pretty unstable. If you drop it, it explodes. So getting the lights turned on, they now at least have the ability to see, as Zach says they need to go below where the nest is buried. As they walk around, clearly this thing is in there with them. Carl then spots the conglomeration as it runs away, indicating a potential collective intelligence, which let's discuss. All right, we're about to get to see this thing that is baiting Carl quite easily, and this intelligence is beyond what we could expect from a normal colony. But with this idea, we have to apply what we already know, much like how all ants in the colony, they're clearly taking over roles just to a larger degree. The worker ants become the muscle, and the bone becomes, well, the bone. The central intelligence dictating the movement of the colony is going to be the queen, but the queen at some point had to become intelligent, and I think I know why. Given the hostile environment, truly only the strongest would survive, just like every Halo montage from 2008 would have you believe. So it wouldn't be an accident that the colony who exhibited new traits and more forward thinking would be able to survive such an environment. And to this end, it started simple enough, just an increased ability to coordinate in a desert. But as the species had to overcome new trials and succeeded and continue eating and surviving, traits of intellect would become more important, and this would begin building in the species. Sort of like how humans have gotten more intelligent according to the theory of evolution, except for like maybe the last 50 years we've gotten really stupid. So too did this species, except they didn't get stupid, all to contend better. And you know what, I wouldn't say we've gotten stupid. People are just making worse decisions. So as the queen gained this intellect, or like we'll call it a lower mammal level of intelligence, this allowed for them to use their already used social standing to change the worker and soldier behavior. Much like how at some point an ape picked up a bone and wielded it as an offensive tool, the queen at some point would have a Jimmy Neutron brain blast and would direct the ants to behave in a similar pattern as how they already did, just with a more abstract goal. And that's the biggest difference. A species would need to think abstractly to use a tool, and this requires more intelligence. We see it with crows, apes, and humans, using one thing to get another thing rather than just going after the thing you want that can't be obtained without the tool. The same can be said for this ant species, and this allows them to adopt hunting patterns as a secondary measure to obtain their primary goal. So as they continue heading deeper into the mines of Nambia, Carl runs off as Zach realizes it's baiting him away. Again, intelligence. But Carl then gets knocked out by like a ventilation pipe as it kneels over him trying to take him out. Zach then lets off a few shots as the thing starts giving chase. He out-jukes it, sending it careening below because after all, it's just a pile of ants. You can't not get out-juked by humanity. And then Carl approaches the hole as it grabs him. Unfortunately, the ants are still able to hold on to things. So they try to hold on to him as then he pulls out the nitroglycerin and then kind of just like lets go. Falling below, the ensuing explosion takes him and the creatures out, as what they find next is the other part of the colony. The brain of the nest sits there pulsating as Zach does a smart thing and stabs it before all the other ants can overwhelm them. The ants, having lost their central intelligence, scatter as Zach and Mickey barely make it out of there before the mine collapses. So this is the queen. Much like having a larger abdomen, we aren't sure if the pulsating mass is the abdomen or if it's something else. But what seems clear to me is the mound is integral to allowing a scent to be basically disseminated out through the field so that the ants can respond. By stabbing this presumed abdomen, I would suppose, it led to the end of the queen and then her intelligence, so now they're not getting any sense, they don't really know what they're supposed to be doing. So upon this happening, it's sort of like taking out the brain of a human. Sure, your body can operate for a while, but without direct intervention, the body will die. And this is the fate of the ant colony. As Mickey approaches the truck, she finds Johan has been eaten. Whoops. Meanwhile, back over the camp, at the conclusion of this thing, oh, here we go. Mickey comes out in a sundress because the sun's out, and Zach is rocking the long sleeve shirt under short sleeve shirt under long sleeve shirt look with a wooden necklace. My God, I remember this. I remember wearing this. I'm starting to feel like one of those skeletons at this point, so let's move on. So as they have a talk, Zach says, I'm not gonna be around anymore. They share a moment of how he can't hang out because it's a big world and he's not ready to settle down. I mean, I get it. Like, it is what it is. So he kisses her almost incorrectly at first. Like if you watch, he kind of forgets the position of the camera and then changes it so he can kiss her and it can be shown on camera. They kept that in there for some reason. I don't know why. But she gets in her taxi as they load a box in the back of the truck, and Mickey wants him to leave with her, but Zach says, no, I'm still needed in the desert at Camp C, so I can't go. Bro, I'd be leaving this place so fast. But I guess, you know, it pays, so. Meanwhile, in the box, however, the Ant Queen is still in there. So I'm not really sure why he did that. Maybe to infect another part of the planet. Scientific research. Maybe the long sleeve shorts under short sleeve shirts in the desert denotes evil. There's really no telling. But thus concludes Bone Snatcher. But anyhow, I want to thank you guys for watching. I've been getting kind of screwed by the algorithm lately. It's that time of year. Every YouTuber's getting screwed in the month of July or January. It just happens. So if you want to leave a like or comment, or both, that would be baller of you. I'll drop my Twitter, Discord, Patreon, Roanoke Tales channel link, and merch shop links in the description for all those interested. And speaking of patrons, I'd like to thank mine real quick. First, huge thank you to our astronaut, the Soviet robot. Thank you, sir. Next up, I'd like to thank our astrophysicist, Death Dancer, and DudeMan003. Thanks, guys. Next, huge thank you to our scientist, Chad the Enjoyer of Scientific Explanations of B-grade horror movies, Dakota23, Florian, Lucian Dragon, Octavia Serpentia, and the last final girl on the left. And the rest of my patrons, I appreciate y'all's support as well. Your help goes way further than you think. More so because I'm jumping states here soon. It's greatly appreciated. I don't deserve it, but you guys are ballers, so thank you. But that's gonna do it for me. I hope everyone enjoyed, and I will see y'all in the next one.